There is a point where the wealth conversation changes. When you're trying to build wealth, you're asking, how do I make more money? But once you've accumulated wealth, another question becomes just as important. How do I keep it? Think about that. It's one thing to create wealth, it's another thing to preserve it. And it's another thing entirely to transfer it to the next generation. Welcome to day 18 of 30 Days of Gold and Silver. And today we're asking, why do some wealthy families own gold? And more importantly, what can everyday people learn from the way wealthy families think about assets, diversification, and legacy? So yesterday we really kind of traveled through thousands of years of history, right? We talked about ancient civilization, gold coins, the gold standard, fiat currency, and then gold's continuing role in the modern financial system. Today's conversation takes that history and brings it into the present because gold isn't only sitting in museums, it's still owned by central banks, institutions, investors, and some families who think about wealth across generations. But here's the important part. I'm not saying every wealthy person owns gold. And I'm definitely not saying gold is the reason they're wealthy. We're asking different questions, or we are asking a different question, I would say. Why might someone who already owns productive assets still want some exposure to gold? And this is a point that I probably want to make is, creating wealth versus preserving wealth. And this is probably today's biggest concept. Wealth creation and wealth preservation are not necessarily the same thing. And if you're building wealth, you might focus heavily on, building a business, investing in productive companies, real estate, developing valuable skills, increasing income. Those things can potentially create wealth. But once you've accumulated significant wealth and significant assets, you may begin thinking differently. Now you're asking, how diversified am I? What risk am I exposed to? What happens if one part of my portfolio performs poorly? How do I preserve purchasing power over decades? And that's when the conversation starts changing. There's a point where I want to make about wealthy people. And I can say this, that wealthy people often think in portfolios. One mistake beginners sometimes make is thinking wealthy people put everything into one investment. Usually, sophisticated wealth management is about portfolios. Someone right now may own, businesses or stocks or bonds or real estate or cash, private investments, and perhaps alternative assets, including precious metals. Now, different assets can serve different purposes. Which one investment will make me rich? A better question can be, how do these assets work together? Here's another point I want to make, that gold doesn't need to be the growth engine. And this is really important because gold doesn't have to outperform everything else for someone to see value in growing it. Remember in day number 15, we said that physical gold doesn't pay dividends, it doesn't collect rent, it doesn't produce business profits. So someone might use business stocks or real estate as potential growth and income engines while considering gold for a different potential role. And that's a major mindset shift. Every asset doesn't have to do the same job. So Another point we want to think about is diversification, right? Why might someone who already owns stocks and estate and real estate and businesses want another type of asset? And one reason is diversification. Different assets can respond differently to inflation, interest rates, currency movements, financial crisis, economic growth, geopolitical uncertainty. Gold won't always rise when other assets fall. So we've already kind of busted that myth already. But because gold has different characteristics from stocks or real estate, some investors use it as a one component of a diversified portfolio. So remember, diversification doesn't guarantee profits or eliminate losses. It's about managing exposure to different risks. So when you think about another point, purchasing power matters. So there's another shift that happens when you begin to think like long term, right? You stop asking only how many dollars do I have, and you start asking what will those dollars buy in the future? And that's purchasing power. And if your wealth is intended to last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or potentially multiplying generations, inflation becomes really an important consideration. Now, I can say this, that gold has historically been considered by some investors as one potentially um, long-term store of value. But remember our earlier lesson, gold isn't guaranteed to match inflation over every month, year, or even every period. Long-term wealth planning requires a much bigger picture. So here's another point. Why central banks are worth studying. And really, here's something that I find fascinating. Central banks operate inside our modern monetary system, right? Yet, many also hold gold among their reserve assets. So that doesn't mean central banks own gold, therefore you should buy gold. That's not the lesson. The interesting question is, why does an asset with thousands of years of history still have a place in modern reserve management? That's worth studying. And that's the mindset I want you developing, not blindly copying what wealthy people do or institutions do, but asking, why do they do it? So I want to get you to think beyond your lifetime. Now we're getting to my favorite part of today's conversation, and that is, I think I've been discussing this over the past, 17, now 18 days, is legacy. There's a difference between making money and building something that can outlive you. And when you begin thinking generationally, your questions change. So instead of only asking, how much can I make this year? You begin asking, what am I building for my family? What assets am I accumulating? And what financial knowledge am I transferring? What happens to everything I built when I'm gone? And that last part is important, is that legacy isn't simply transferring assets, it's transferring knowledge. So really the biggest lesson today isn't to buy gold, right? If you leave today's video thinking Billy said wealthy families own gold, so I need to buy gold, I think you've missed the point. And here's what I actually want you to take away from this video today. Start thinking like an asset owner. Learn the difference between income and wealth, consumption and ownership, growth and preservation, concentration and diversification, price and value. short-term thinking, and generational thinking. Gold is simply one asset, and we can use that to teach those bigger principles. So this is deeply connected why I talk so much about building, a financial legacy. I'm interested in creating income. Absolutely. I'm interested in entrepreneurship. I'm interested in digital businesses. I'm interested in growing wealth, but ultimately, I don't just want to make money. I don't know if you do. I don't know if you just want to make money. I want to build something that matters beyond me. And that's why I think about wealth through the framework of create, grow, preserve, transfer, create income, grow assets, preserve what you built, then transfer both assets and financial knowledge to the people coming behind you. And that's what legacy means to me. So here's today's wealth principle. Don't just build income, build assets. And then don't just build assets, build a legacy. Because here's the reality, right? Your income can stop. A job can disappear. A business can change. Markets can change. But developing the knowledge and discipline to accumulate and manage assets can completely change the way a family thinks about money. So here's the question I'd encourage you to write down. If my income stopped tomorrow, what would I still own? Not what do I wear? What do I drive? How much money did I make last year? But what do I own? Businesses, investments, real estate, cash reserves, gold or silver, intellectual property, other product access. The question can completely change your financial perspective. Now, I do want to hear from you. And which stage best describes where your thinking is today? A, create. I'm focused on increasing my income. B, grow. I'm focused on accumulating assets. C, preserve. I'm thinking more about protecting and diversifying what I've built. D, transfer. I'm actively thinking about generational wealth and legacy. Or E, all four. I'm building the entire system. So drop A, B, C, D, or E in the comments and tell me why. And if you'd like to learn more about physical gold and silver and explore the platform that I personally use, like I always say, visit the link in the description, but don't buy precious metals simply because wealthy people or institutions may own them. Learn, ask questions, understand ownership, understand costs, understand storage, understand liquidity, understand delivery, and decide whether precious metal have an appropriate role within your broader financial strategy. And if you're enjoying 30 days of gold and silver, hit like, subscribe, and share this episode with somebody who's ready to start thinking beyond income and toward ownership. Because tomorrow, we're tackling another huge topic. Day 19, we're talking about gold, inflation, and purchasing power. If you put $100 under your mattress today, what would that $100 actually buy 10, 20, or 30 years from now? And can gold really protect purchasing power? We're separating the facts from the hype tomorrow. I'll see you in day number 19. And in closing, wealth isn't only about how much money you make. It's about what you own, what you preserve, what you understand, and what you're able to pass forward. Guys, this is Billy B. Josie III. I'm president and CEO of Stoneleaf Ventures, LLC. where we help everyday people create generational wealth and legacy through gold and silver and digital marketing. God bless you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.